Hi, everybody. It's Yvonne DeVita and Dr. Larry McDaniel with another episode of Scratchins and Sniffins Out Loud. And today we're really excited because we have a treat for you. Dr. Larry and Dr. Bill Craig, I'm going to turn it over to you, Dr. Larry.
Bill, I wanted to come back to something that you'd said before, because when I was in practice up in Montana, I didn't have the luxury. I was in kind of a rural area. I didn't have the luxury of an emergency practice. So I had to virtually be on call 24 hours a day. And one of the more recent developments that I think is a great thing is the advent of emergency hospitals, where people can have access to veterinary care, around the clock, 24 hours a day. And so how did you handle that with your practice? How did you handle emergencies?
Well, San Antonio obviously is a large metropolitan area, population over 1 million people. And practice in a metropolitan area is going to be a lot different than it is in a small town or a rural community because of the availability of other services and specialists like emergency clinics. And I would say that in most large cities where there's an emergency clinic, the standard of care has become mandatory that you don't hospitalize critical patients in your hospital overnight because they are unattended. There's no one there to monitor them and to make adjustments in their therapy if things change during the night. So if we have a hospitalized case at our clinic, and at the end of the day that pet is not ready to go home, it's become mandatory that those pets be transferred to an emergency clinic for care overnight. And in some cities, there are even now 24-hour critical care facilities, such as you would see at a major human hospital, where that patient needs continuous monitoring and care for a period of days, and rather than being transferred back and forth between a day practice and an emergency clinic, it goes to a critical care facility and stays there 24 hours a day until it's ready to go home.
Wow. And I guess that is a good thing ultimately for the patient and for the client, is that the standard of care is maintained throughout that entire period. I remember it was, sometimes difficult to pay attention at 3 o'clock in the morning. You don't have access.
This is a transition that's occurred during the time, the 30 years that I've been in practice, because even in San Antonio, when I first started practicing in 1977, the concept of the emergency clinic was something that was just getting started, and most primary care practices did hospitalize animals overnight, even critical animals, with the understanding with the client that there's no one here at night to monitor them, or possibly we'll come back later in the evening to check and see how things are going, but it's the best you have to offer in that particular situation. Then as the emergency type practices began to develop, the next step was to transfer the patient to the emergency practice at the end of the day, say at 6 o'clock or whatever time your practice closes, and then transfer them back 8 o'clock the next morning when the emergency clinic closed. Well, that creates a significant logistical burden, because somebody's got to transfer that patient back and forth.
Right.
Usually it's the pet owner, and if the pet owner has a job and a real life, that gets to be kind of old after a couple of days of getting off work early, running over to the emergency clinic, or running over to your practice, taking the pet to the emergency clinic, getting up at the crack of dawn the next day, picking up the pet at the emergency clinic, bringing them back to your practice. Right. So that's where the concept of the 24-hour critical care facility has come online, and that's something we're seeing more and more of in the larger areas, that requires a certain population base to be able to support an operation like that.
Right.
Okay. Thank you both. I hope anyone listening if has any questions will write in, and we'll be happy to have either Dr. Larry or Dr. Bill back on to answer those questions. So this is another episode of Scratchins and Sniffins Out Loud,